After very dark man called out Ekiti State governor for his wicked annual healthcare budget of 68 million naira, Ekiti State government responded through their Ministry of Health to clarify that their 2026 annual healthcare budget is not 68 million naira. In fact, it's 19 billion naira. Just because very dark man called out the state governor have to respond to explain to the citizens, as it should be in a democratic nation. Now, I will tell you this. I've taken my time today to do the research about Ekiti State's annual healthcare budget, and I'm glad to tell you that yes, their healthcare budget for 2026 is 19.65 billion naira. And the 68 million naira figure which was cited was actually for a particular line under their primary health care. It's not the annual budget. So all this thing happened because very dark man called out the governor, and the governor had to do the right thing. And I tell you people this, right? I always say this. Imagine majority of Nigerian youths are like very dark man in terms of calling things out the way they are. Imagine majority of us home and abroad, we see things and we call them by their names, just like very dark man does. Very dark man called out the Minister of Education while he was in Turkey, while he was in Morocco. Minister of Education have to reply. Very dark man have called out people in the past. He've called out Wike and demand something to be done, and they always reply whenever very dark man calls them out. Just think about it for a second. Forget about your hate for very dark man. Forget about your disagreement and dislike and all that. That is fine. But think about it for a minute, that a majority of us, we act like very dark man. We say Nigeria is a democratic country. It is. But sometimes some of the Nigerian youth act like they are under military regime. And when you give people that line to treat you like an animal, they will take it. However you tell people to treat you, that's how they're going to treat you. Most of the times, the Nigerian politician treats the Nigerian youth this way because the Nigerian youth allow it. How many people have very dark man called out and they respond swiftly? You think because he's special? It's because he knows his rights as a Nigerian child and he knows how to carry himself. Imagine majority of us sees this thing. Imagine a governor of Ekiti State. He had to explain, because that is his responsibility to explain to us. He is working for us. Until you people begin to understand that these your politicians are working for us, they need to be explaining to us, including Wike. Wike is working for you and I, not the other way around. But you people always glorify your oppressors. You think that there's somehow they are so important and so powerful because you lot made them look like that. Kudos to very dark man. The governor don't explain, because he has to explain when we ask. But alas, we don't.
In recent days, public attention has been drawn to a conversation that sits at the intersection of civic responsibility, public accountability, youth participation, and democratic engagement in Nigeria. The discussion began when a popular social commentator, widely known as Very Dark Man, publicly questioned the annual healthcare budget of Ekiti State, alleging that the figure allocated was 68 million naira. This claim quickly gained traction across social media platforms, sparking outrage, confusion, and renewed debate about governance, transparency, and the role of citizens in holding elected officials accountable. What followed was a response from the Ekiti State government, through its Ministry of Health, clarifying that the total healthcare budget for the 2026 fiscal year was not 68 million naira, but approximately 19.65 billion naira. According to the official explanation, the 68 million naira figure referred to a specific line item under primary healthcare, not the entire healthcare allocation. This clarification reshaped the narrative and raised important questions about information accuracy, civic activism, and how democratic accountability functions in practice. From an objective standpoint, it is important to first separate emotion from evidence. Budget documents, by their nature, are complex, multi-layered, and often misunderstood when individual line items are taken out of context. In this case, the Ekiti State healthcare budget appears to include multiple components covering tertiary hospitals, primary healthcare centers, public health programs, personnel costs, infrastructure development, and preventive health initiatives. The 68 million naira figure, when isolated without context, understandably triggered concern, especially given Nigeria's ongoing healthcare challenges. However, the subsequent confirmation that the total allocation stands at over 19 billion naira changes the factual foundation of the debate. Accuracy matters, especially in public discourse, because credibility is the currency of effective advocacy. That said, the story does not end with numbers alone. One of the most significant elements of this episode is not merely the correction of a figure, but the fact that a state government deemed it necessary to publicly respond and clarify its position. In democratic systems, this interaction between citizens and government is not optional, it is fundamental. Elected officials derive their authority from the people, and public funds are entrusted to them for management on behalf of the population. When citizens ask questions, whether politely or critically, government institutions have a responsibility to provide clear and factual answers. In that sense, the Ekiti State government's response aligns with democratic norms, regardless of what triggered it. This brings us to a broader issue raised by Godwin J.'s statement, which goes beyond the specific budget controversy and touches on civic culture in Nigeria. The argument presented suggests that the response from the government did not occur because of any special privilege held by a particular individual, but because the individual exercised his rights as a citizen. This perspective invites reflection on why similar accountability is not consistently demanded or achieved across different contexts. In many cases, silence, apathy, or resignation among citizens creates an environment where leaders feel less pressure to explain their actions. Democracy, while defined by laws and institutions, is sustained by active participation. Without citizen engagement, even well-designed democratic systems can become hollow. The comparison made between democratic governance and military-era attitudes is particularly thought-provoking. During military regimes, citizens had limited avenues to question authority, and dissent often came at great personal risk. In contrast, democratic systems are designed to accommodate criticism, debate, and scrutiny. However, when citizens internalize fear, self-censorship, or a sense of powerlessness, they may behave as though those authoritarian constraints still exist. This mindset can persist long after formal structures have changed. Overcoming it requires not only legal protections but also a shift in public consciousness, where people recognize that questioning leadership is not an act of rebellion but a civic duty. Another important element in this discussion is the role of social media and digital platforms. Figures like Very Dark Man have leveraged online visibility to amplify issues that might otherwise receive limited attention. This phenomenon is not unique to Nigeria. Globally, digital activism has reshaped how citizens engage with power. However, influence carries responsibility. When large audiences are involved, accuracy becomes even more critical. Misinformation, even when unintentional, can erode trust and weaken legitimate advocacy efforts. The Ekiti budget episode serves as a reminder that fact-checking and careful interpretation of data are essential, especially when addressing sensitive topics like healthcare funding. At the same time, the impact of such public commentary cannot be dismissed simply because an initial claim required clarification. The fact that government officials responded promptly suggests that public scrutiny works. It reinforces the idea that visibility and persistence can compel institutions to engage with citizens. This dynamic illustrates a core principle of democratic accountability. Leaders are more likely to explain themselves when they know the public is paying attention. If you find this kind of analysis helpful, this might be a good moment to subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and help expand the conversation so more people can engage with these issues constructively. The statement also raises concerns about how politicians are perceived and treated in society. When leaders are elevated beyond criticism, portrayed as untouchable, or excessively glorified, the balance of power subtly shifts. Public office holders begin to appear as masters rather than servants of the people. In democratic theory, this inversion is problematic. Public authority is meant to be delegated, not surrendered. Citizens do not owe blind loyalty to individuals, they owe critical engagement to the system that governs them. Recognizing this distinction is crucial for sustaining accountability over time. Furthermore, the argument that politicians respond not because someone is special, but because that person understands their rights, highlights the importance of civic education. Knowing one's rights, understanding how government budgets work, and being aware of channels for engagement empower citizens to participate effectively. Without this knowledge, frustration can turn into disengagement or misplaced anger. Civic literacy enables people to ask better questions, demand clearer answers, and evaluate responses more critically. It also reduces the risk of manipulation, whether by political actors or by influencers seeking attention rather than solutions. The repeated example cited, where officials respond after being publicly questioned, suggest a pattern worth examining. While individual personalities may draw attention, the underlying mechanism is public accountability. When issues are framed in ways that resonate with broader audiences, institutions feel compelled to respond. This does not mean that confrontation is always the best approach, but it does show that silence rarely produces results. Constructive pressure, grounded in facts and expressed persistently, often yields engagement. It is also worth considering the psychological dimension of political participation among youths. Many young people feel disconnected from governance, believing their voices do not matter. This perception can become self-fulfilling. When participation is low, leaders have fewer incentives to respond. When engagement increases, even incrementally, responsiveness tends to follow. The challenge lies in transforming individual moments of outrage into sustained civic involvement. Subscribing to informed platforms, sharing credible analysis, and participating in respectful discussions are small but meaningful steps in that direction. From a policy perspective, transparency in budgeting remains a critical issue. Governments can reduce misunderstandings by presenting budget data in accessible formats, using clear language, and proactively communicating allocations and priorities. When information is opaque, it creates space for speculation and mistrust. Open data initiatives, regular briefings, and responsive communication channels can help bridge the gap between institutions and citizens. Accountability should not rely solely on viral moments, it should be embedded in routine governance practices. As this discussion continues, it is important to resist framing it as a battle between personalities. The focus should remain on systems, processes, and principles. Personal disagreements, admiration, or dislike should not distract from the larger question: how can democratic accountability be strengthened in everyday governance? When debates become overly personalized, they risk losing sight of structural issues that affect millions of people. In reflecting on the Ekiti healthcare budget clarification, one can acknowledge both the correction of misinformation and the positive example of governmental response. These are not mutually exclusive. A mature democratic conversation allows for acknowledging errors while still recognizing progress. It also allows for learning. Future discussions about public spending can benefit from more careful examination of official documents and clearer communication from authorities. If you are watching or listening to this analysis, consider sharing it with others who are interested in governance, civic engagement, and public accountability. These conversations are most impactful when they reach diverse audiences. And feel free to leave a comment with your perspective. Respectful disagreement and thoughtful contributions help deepen understanding for everyone involved. Ultimately, democracy is not a static condition, it is a continuous process. It requires vigilance, participation, and a willingness to engage critically but constructively. Episodes like this one, involving budget scrutiny and official clarification, are reminders that accountability mechanisms do exist, but they function best when citizens actively use them. Understanding that elected officials work for the public, not the other way around, is a foundational principle that must be continually reinforced. As more citizens recognize their role in governance, the quality of public discourse can improve. Instead of fear, there can be confidence. Instead of silence, informed dialogue. And instead of resignation, a sense of shared responsibility for the future. This does not mean constant conflict, but it does mean ongoing engagement. Governments that are questioned regularly tend to govern more carefully, knowing their actions will be examined. In closing, the Ekiti State healthcare budget discussion serves as a case study in modern civic engagement. It highlights the power of public scrutiny, the necessity of factual accuracy, and the importance of understanding one's rights in a democratic society. It also reminds us that progress often comes not from waiting for change, but from participating in it. If you believe in informed conversations like this, take a moment to subscribe, share this analysis, and join the discussion in the comments. Collective awareness is built one conversation at a time, and every thoughtful voice adds value.